Working? Yes. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alastair from Sust Global, and I'm here this morning with Stenver from Solid.World to talk to you about de-risking carbon finance with data. So, good morning, Stenver.
Good morning, Alastair.
Perhaps you could start by telling us a bit about Solid.World.
Absolutely. Nice to see you, everybody here. I think there's about 50% what we had yesterday over here. But I'm glad that there's still so many cool people. I already met a few staying for the day as well. So Solid.World DAO is all about enabling ESG financing at scale. We're essentially, in a way, creating like an ETF type of structure for investing into different carbon credit asset classes. And so it's all about diversified de-risking investment in mangroves or ARR, like afforestation, reforestation, etc. So diversification and de-risking is the keywords we have. We're a lot about that. And that's why we work with Sust Global and Alastair. So Alastair, maybe you can tell us a bit about Sust Global.
So at Sust Global, we provide the climate intelligence that enables organizations and society as a whole to thrive in this changing world. So our users include the likes of corporate operations and supply chain teams. We work with real estate and financial markets, cities, NGOs, and the primary demand at the moment is for our physical risk data. So that's risk data across 6 physical climate hazards, multiple climate scenarios, anywhere on Earth, up to 2100. And it's being used by those organizations in particular. Cities, NGOs have different use cases, but it's being used for to include physical risks into decision-making and then obviously reporting, which is increasingly mandatory. So the reason I'm here today, the reason I connected with Marco was because we are increasingly seeing interest from nature-based solutions. So it's across the full value chain, project developers, raters, financiers who want to understand the physical risks in particular associated with the solutions they're developing, rating, investing in. And that's how Stenver and I connected initially. So you're probably aware, or you may or may not be aware, that, for example, in California, the regulated carbon trading system there allows forest offsets to be used in the trading scheme, and there's a buffer that's required for wildfires for when the offsets or a package of offsets burns, that there's enough of a buffer to make sure that the offset maintains its value. But already, in I think about 8 years, the 100-year buffer has already been burnt through. So even if the world was going to stay as it is, which sadly we all know it isn't, there would be tremendous risk as any further wildfires eat into the value of the offset. So you can see that's an obvious scenario where wildfire impacts offset values, but it also applies to soil carbon with drought and to cyclones with mangroves. And I think we all agree here that nature-based solutions are part of the overall solution. So it's, I think, imperative that we understand how physical risks impact on, or the very risk that the nature-based solutions are mitigating, how they impact on those very solutions. So perhaps you can tell me a bit about Solid.World and why you work with Sust.
Absolutely. So we're all about protecting our LPs and de-risking their investments. So it's all about liquidity providers who, for example, want to invest into mangroves. We have to keep them happy. We have to make sure their underlying assets don't get destroyed by natural disasters or other issues. So we have a very good risk analysis and due diligence team internally. The team is staffed by ex-B0 people. For those that don't know them, B0 is the world's leading carbon credit rating agency. And initially, we planned to do the entire climate analysis ourselves because these guys knew how to do it, and we didn't think there's any solution out there. And then we suddenly ran across Sust Global. We took a look at what they were doing. We took a look at their climate data warehouse. And there's some fascinating discoveries we made over there. For example, these guys have completely automated, and they're way ahead of the curve for anything when it comes to climate risk and disaster predictions. When you look at the standards that, for example, the leading registries in the world for voluntary carbon offsets have set, they're basing their climate disaster risk profile on historical stuff. But climate change is already happening. We need to be looking forward and predicting the future, not looking 5 years in the past. And Sust Global suddenly had a database where we could just pick a polygon, and we could see that anything like disasters, like wildfires, hurricane, earthquakes, whatever, and this is immensely powerful. We suddenly realized we can just avoid hiring an extra person or two, or in the long run even more, and just use their product to completely automate this part. And yeah, we've been using that super successfully. It's used in every report we have. And mangroves, one of the fun things I personally didn't know, because I don't have a B0 background, is that mangroves, for example, have zero wildfire risk, because turns out they're on water, So, but yeah, so yeah, Sust Global has been incredibly helpful for us, and we've been working with them ever since. So yeah, but what do you think sets you apart from the other ones that are in the market, Alastair?
So yeah, it's well, we get asked that all the time. Obviously, I mean, there's lots of physical risk data providers out there. I'll assume that you don't know much about how physical risk data is generated, but you start with the big global climate models. So these are these big physics-based models that inform the IPCC scenarios, for example. And the problem with them is that they're very coarse, and they're not meant for asset-specific risk measurement. They also have known biases. So the standard on what we do, and also the climate community as a whole, they bias correct those models using what we could call basic machine learning to improve their accuracy and make them higher resolution. At Sust, we go a step further. We use what we would call advanced AIs and neural networks that super resolve the climate risk analysis, to the point where we now are NASA's flagship climate risk product is half the resolution of our own, or ours is twice as high resolution, might be clearer to say, whilst we also maintain or beat them in terms of levels of accuracy. So NASA's data, or parts of NASA's satellite data, inform our models, but we've been able to super resolve to that point. And I don't do it justice. We've just had 2 papers published with climate change AI. Anyone that wants any more information, by the way, can email me or message me on that. We also run, and that's actually how we met Solid.World, we run these things called climate data studios. They're free to attend. You get to play with our data for free and talk to our data scientists. So if you're a startup looking to play with some physical risk data, please reach out. We're running one of these in January. So Stenver, finally, perhaps you could say a bit more about your value proposition and how you're taking it to market, how you're helping your customers.
Yeah, so there's essentially 2 types of people we're working with. One is hedge funds, family offices, corporates who want to have exposure to different classes of carbon assets. For them, we essentially just enable very easily to, let's say, take a position in mangroves or take a position in afforestation and reforestation. They can earn profits while literally lifting new carbon projects. They can use the profits to offset their carbon footprint, for example. So that way they don't have to take a loss on their balance sheet. It's literally what Google and Facebook and all of them are doing, but we enable doing that at scale. That's one type of users. And for them, it's all about having diversified de-risk position. The other type of users is, for example, carbon trading houses, institutional suppliers. They're directly sourcing projects all the time, looking for good opportunities. And we're essentially, let's say, they find a good mangrove project to invest in. It promises to create 1 million credits a year. We're giving out our risk analysis and due diligence for them. also using Sust Global's data for climate risk, but we include stuff like financial risk, legal risk, carbon yield risk, team risk, all this information, and we give it to them for free of charge as a public good, where we conservatively predict how much carbon these projects are actually going to generate. So that way we start removing over-promises, because I didn't know if you knew, but 90% of carbon projects over-promise and under-deliver. And we want to basically level the field and make sure that the initial, essentially the junior investors, like the institutional traders, they have a safer avenue for investing.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you very much for the conversation today. Any questions, please ask them outside. Thank you very much. Round of applause.